Welcome everyone, I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and now that all of the film has been watched and all of the grades are in, it's time for the FBGP Scouting NFL Draft Prospect Preview presented by Crossover. Before we get started with our rankings, here's how we gather our grades and what they actually mean. First, we watch a minimum of 3 full games on a prospect, his best game, his worst game, and the best possible matchup. And second, we grade on 15 key points specific to the position to equal 100 points in total. Now here's what the grades you'll see by a prospect name will actually mean. Prospects that have earned grades in the 90s graded out as potential future NFL All-Pros. Prospects in the 80s are considered future Pro Bowl players. Grades in the 70s represent solid NFL starters, and grades in the 60s are players that we believe are spot starters or situational starters in the NFL. And if you notice, we don't use the word reserve or backup because we personally feel as though there's no such thing as backups in the NFL, only starters in waiting. So without further ado, let's kick off our rankings by taking a look at our top 10. We break down our defensive end prospects into 3 different categories: 4-3 defensive ends, 5 techs, 4-eye ends, and also edge defenders. So we'll start off with our top 4-3 defensive end prospects in this year's draft class. Charles Harris of Missouri is a twitchy defensive end that plays with great length, and he has the quickness to beat offensive tackles inside and shows very good closing speed to the quarterback. Where you'd like to see him grow his game or get better is in his read and recognition skills. I think he'll be an excellent defensive end in the NFL with some Olivier Vernon-like ability. Terrell Basham of Ohio had a strong week at the Senior Bowl. He's more of a power rusher than a speed guy, and is best playing front side. If he can get consistent pad level, he'd be much more productive and more of a true pass rushing threat. Taco Charlton out of Michigan does a decent job versus the run because he's able to set the edge and extend very well. He'll either clog a lane or force the running back to redirect. I think his game is very similar to Derek Morgan. Dwayne Smoot does flash the quick twitch ability to turn the corner, but he can be inconsistent in finding the football, and that's an area where you like to see him get better as he moves forward. Carl Lawson out of Auburn is much better with his hand in the dirt as opposed to up on his feet. He's a strong point of attack player with limited athleticism to truly be considered a threat as a pass rusher. He'll be a solid defensive end in run situations with some ability to power his way to the quarterback. Brian Cox Jr. at 6'3", 264 can play either defensive end spot, but because of his read and recognition skills and limited athleticism, I think he's ideally suited as a strong side defensive end with the capability to situationally play inside as a 4-eye. Trey Hendrickson of Florida Atlantic had a spectacular week at the East-West Shrine game. He has a great first step and a knack for closing in on the quarterback. It's the other aspects of his game that needs to be smoothed out: anchoring, using his hands, disengaging versus the run. Right now, as a situational pass rusher, I do believe he has a role. And rounding out our 12 prospects are Pat O'Connor for Eastern Michigan and Paul Miano of Virginia Union, who was a preseason football game plan All-American. Jordan Willis out of Kansas State graded out as our number 1 4-3 defensive end in this year's draft class. I'm a big fan of his read and recognition skills. He's a gap disciplined and fundamentally sound player, and that's a big reason why you see him involved in a lot of plays. He has great hand usage, not just as a pass rusher, but also in this every down approach. He's able to get his hands on the offensive lineman first, extend, and that allows him to consistently read and react properly. He's always in and around the play. He's a hustle player in a positive way, and he plays a run and pass equally as effective. Derek Barnett may not be the tremendous athlete that the other prospects are at this position, but he's a technically sound, savvy, productive player. He's strong enough to set the edge and play the run, and with enough quickness to pressure the quarterback. He has very good hand usage that's quick and compact that helps him turn the corner, and he also shows the ability to shock and control, then disengage from an offensive lineman. What I really like about his game is that he has a great sense of timing. He knows when and where to make the play to turn the tide of a game. Only a few have that innate ability. Tano Passanio of Villanova has the upside to make defensive line coaches at the next level salivate. He's raw technically and gets by a lot on hustle, length, and athleticism. He's extremely quick off the ball, which in its own way causes a lot of disruption. He plays extremely high, and that limits his effectiveness on a down-to-down basis, but he does put in a lot of this. He did put a lot of this together, in my opinion, during the week in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and was one of the standouts. You can't coach what he was born with physically, which is size and talent, but you can smooth out the technique, and once you do, you'll have a Carlos Dunlap clone. Moving on to our 5-tech 4-eye defensive end prospect, Dietrich Wise of Arkansas is your ideal inside strong side defensive end. He's long with strong hands. He uses both his length and his strength to his advantage. A functionally strong player, Wise can maintain the line of scrimmage while also showing the ability to disengage and collapse a pocket. I think he'll be a really good player in this role as a pro. Hunter Demick out of Utah is too productive to not have at least a sub-package role in the NFL. He's quick off the ball and is able to, for the most part, overcome those length issues. As a run-stuffing defensive end, I think he'll succeed. Case Weddle of Northwest Missouri State has really good versatility. He played across the front seven in college, and I like his ability to get off blocks and pursue the quarterback. He'll have to get stronger to be able to anchor better, and pad level has to become much more consistent. He has shown some ability to stand up, and I think his future in the NFL is right here in this role as a 5-tech or 4-eye, where he can take full advantage of his ball get off and ability to collapse the pocket. DeMarcus Walker out of Florida State is one of my favorite defensive prospects in this year's draft class. He shows the versatility to excel in multiple spots up front. He's quick to beat a guard or a center and strong enough to power rush an offensive tackle. I think he was a highly productive player with above average strength, quickness, and technique. Walker has the skills and versatility to be an impact rookie, and I'm a big fan of how he's able to maintain leverage and hold his own at the point of attack versus double teams despite being a quote-unquote undersized player. He's very stout and above average versus the run. His game, in my opinion, is very similar to Adrian Claiborne. Solomon Thomas out of Stanford has the upside and potential you want to see from an early entry into the draft. He's almost textbook in his hand usage, showing the ability to lock and extend really well, which allows him to shed blocks as a result. Right now, he's a good player in need of fine-tuning. The good part is that he's only a redshirt sophomore that still has a ton of growth left in this game. I think he can play anywhere along the defensive line, but ideally suited as a 4-eye. Keonta Davis out of Chattanooga is one of the top pass rushers in the FCS. He's a versatile defensive lineman who can play multiple spots up front. I could even see him playing 3-tech at some point in his career. He's ox strong, who can win with power and technique as he can with quickness and leverage. Davis is able to transfer speed to power really well. He's more quick or shifty than fast, but he's also able to walk an offensive lineman back into the quarterback. You can tell he was well coached in college. One guy who wasn't listed on our list but should have been at number 8 is Lawrence Hale out of Lamar. Now, he was dismissed from the football team this year, but as a junior, he was a pass rushing terror for the Cardinals. He's 6'2", 280 with very strong hands and shows the ability to beat double teams and also collapse a pocket. I don't think he's quick enough to be a 3-tech, but I do believe as a 4-eye or a 5-tech, he can have some success. It'll be interesting to see where he'll end up because he was a guy that had a lot of buzz heading into 2016. And rounding out our defensive end rankings with our edge rushers in this year's draft class, Darius English out of South Carolina was impressive during the East-West Shrine week of practices. At first glance, you would have thought he was a speed rusher, but he's rather strong for his size and shows the ability to consistently set the edge. Deshaun Hall out of Texas A&M is a much better wide 9 defensive end or outside rusher. He has a great first step that's able to generate explosiveness, but he doesn't have a counter move or above average technique coming behind it. He's a situational edge guy who's coming off a solid week of work in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. Avery Moss of Youngstown State has the ability to play without his hand in the dirt. He gets a great burst out of a 2-point stance as opposed to a 3 or 4-point stance. Now, he's a heady player with great hand usage and the ability to play the run very well. Both Donovan McCray and Kyrie Rozier are under the radar prospects with great athleticism. McCray was the Southwestern Athletic Conference Defensive Player of the Year, while Rozier was a standout at the NFL Regional Combine this past February in DC. Myles Garrett out of Texas A&M was our number 1 edge rusher in this year's draft class. He's super quick off the ball and shows above average acceleration and closing speed to the quarterback. His first step can definitely cause issues. Now, the issue is that he struggles to get off blocks because of marginal technique and hand usage. So when an offensive lineman gets a hold of him, and also some tight ends, he becomes ineffective. However, if he's kept clean and allowed to have a free release or jump on the offensive tackle, he'll set up shop and live in the backfield. I think he's a disruptive run defender because he can quickly get to that inside shoulder off an offensive lineman and take away a gap and also a cutback lane in the process. Now, while he may not be Julius Peppers, I do believe he's Bud Dupree, which is just fine. Derek Rivers was outstanding during his Penguin career at Youngstown State. There's a lot to like about his game. I think he's best suited as a pass rushing specialist until he becomes much more consistent versus the run. He'll be better as an edge defender or a wide 9 defensive end. He was able to showcase his ability as a potential stand-up edge rusher at the Senior Bowl, as he didn't look awkward in space or in coverage during 1-on-1s and 7-on-7 drills. I do believe he's also very underrated in the functional strength department. He's a big dude that can definitely move. And I like Carter Schultz out of Northern Iowa, who was a preseason football game plan All-American and was solid all week long at the East-West Shrine game. He amassed over 50 TFLs and 30 sacks in college. While he doesn't have the functional strength for a consistent down-to-down defensive end in the NFL, he does have the burst and athleticism to serve as a sub-package edge rusher. I do believe he'll find multiple ways to get to the quarterback. So that's a wrap for our 2017 FBGP Scouting Draft Prospect Preview presented by Crossover. To see more of our individual scouting reports, follow us on Twitter at FBGP Scouting and bookmark the page footballgameplan.com/FBGP Scouting. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/footballgameplan, where you can get all of our scouting videos, mock drafts, pro day videos, and interviews with NFL draft prospects. And one more thing, subscribe to us on iTunes under Football Game Plan Podcast.